John from Ripewave Audio for this August 31st, 2024 edition of Ripewave Connections. And we're really excited about this time of year because many brands make their announcements for new products for home theater and hi-fi at this time of year. They're getting ready for that winter season when a lot of us in most of the world have colder weather and we're spending more time indoors watching movies and listening to music. And what we're going to focus in on today, now both Denon and Marantz announced new products this week, but we're going to focus in on Denon's AV receiver, the AVR-A10H. We'll get to that a little bit, but we also have some catch up to do on our mailbox. Now, we haven't done one of these for a few days, and it's time to catch up, and we'll get right into this with the first message that has come in to us. With the last Connections video, we talked about Bluesound's latest release of the Icon, the Node, and the Nano in their lineup. And a couple of these are available now. One of them we're waiting for later in September, including the Node. And this gentleman's writing in, Carl, is saying that, look, the N130 is very versatile. Now, the current generation and the new product and the previous generation have a lot in common. Lots of connections, subwoofer outs, analog outs, digital coax, optical outs, optical in, trigger outs, infrared in, LAN, USB, HDMI, eARC, etc. So it's going to have the same I/O on the new generation as the old, but yes, very flexible. We've been talking about streamers a lot lately, and we really have this desire to be able to use a streamer that can bring in immersive audio, like you get from Apple Music. And currently, it's the Apple TV that we've really homed in on as being a device that's going to be able to deliver that. But there's also more expensive streamers designed to give you a higher quality experience, better sound quality, etc. The problem with those is they don't all support the immersive formats and have no way to send that back. And this is an investigation we're going to do. Now, Stefan is writing in here about not being able to stream Atmos music from Tidal and Amazon. And yes, this is the problem we're talking about. He's looking at the Fire Cube, and there's always a need to be able to play this to his Cinema 30. He's been using mobile apps trying to cast them and the Amazon Cube, and it's not really playing this well. It's not doing gapless music on this like we always want to see. And he finds this very weird that these devices aren't handling the immersive with gapless really well. He'd like to use something like the DMP from Zyto, and it's exactly what he wants, but doesn't believe it can stream Atmos music. Now, we'll probably end up getting such a device. Now, Zyto markets the DMP A6 under the Ever Solo brand. So we have this pictured here. It's under $900. So it is a jump up in cost from the Apple TV, which is under $200. So it is a next tier product, but it really, from our perspective, should do the immersive formats as well. So good comment there. Can Beats is writing in. He says he just went to his local hi-fi dealer and has been told that Yamaha is going to be launching a new AV lineup at the end of 24 or early 25. And there's going to include a true reference model, but no processor or pre-pro separate, however you want to call that. Matt is also weighing in. He's like, yeah, I know they're going to be at CEDIA in a few weeks, so we hope there's something that's going to be revealed there. Yes, a lot of manufacturers do make announcements just before CEDIA or during CEDIA, so we're excited to hear if Yamaha is going to say something more about this new lineup. It would be awesome if they did, and hopefully correct on some of the shortcomings of the current lineup that ends in A. I think they're going to move it to a B as the last letter. We'll see there. Dan is writing in about some guidance we've been given about troubleshooting his Sony, where he's hearing some hisses through the system. And he writes back, though, he a lot of people are hearing the same thing. They're buying new Sony receivers and they hear this hiss, and they've called Sony and reported to them, and Sony's saying, well, it's all within spec, and they've returned it. So this is not good, right? I've had Sony products for decades. If you've been following this channel, you know I stuck with their processor. Of course, they're not making AV processors. They haven't for some time. The quality to me has dropped off, and I don't think the support is really taking ownership for issues the way I feel they should. Saying that something is within spec, but it's an audible hiss, I just don't think that's consumer friendly. I really think they're putting loyalty at risk, and we're likely to go elsewhere, and I already have. Someone else is writing in saying he's been experiencing hiss with his 5000 ES AVR, but he did an upgrade, and he's glad to say that the hiss is no longer there. So perhaps we will get an upgrade that addresses some of you that are hearing that. When we used the 7000 ES, we didn't hear that. Is it particular models? Is it on the 5000, not the 7000? Be good to know more about that, but I believe you when you hear this, it's real, and Sony should address. We had somebody writing in on a video we did August of 23, and Tony is writing, what's a processor? What are balanced and unbalanced connections? Great question. This video was on the Emotiva processors and receivers, their entry-level line, the MC1, the MR1L, and the MR1. And in that, we do talk about these technologies. So first, what's the difference between a processor and a receiver? And we don't always cover these terminologies, but I think it's good we stop every once in a while and bring more on board so they can learn. Well, a receiver is an all-in-one unit. It has everything you need to take input sources in from multiple different technologies and amplify them and send them out to your speakers. The processor differs from an AV receiver is it does not include an amplification stage. It only does preamplification. And you must use external amplifiers. Now, what's also bundled into a processor and a receiver will vary from manufacturer to manufacturer, but the main difference between a processor and a receiver is that a receiver has internal amplification and a processor does not. Otherwise, they deliver very similar capabilities. Great question. Then the other part was about balanced and unbalanced signals. Now, the most common type of connection to a receiver are unbalanced connections in the analog world. Digital connection, we have HDMI and we have optical and coax, but if you're still using some analog signals, they can be balanced or unbalanced. And the most common is the RCA unbalanced connector. And you've seen this on the back of CD players and Blu-ray players, and even a phonograph has usually an unbalanced connection. And that's just a two-wire connection. When you move to balanced connections, those are 3 wires. And the extra wire gives you a ground signal. And the other 2 wires are the signal 180 degrees out of phase of each other. And what happens is the receiving end can cancel out any noise that was picked up from the source to the destination and cancel that out, sort of like noise canceling headphones do. And the result is the noise is removed. And it's particularly good for long distance wiring. So if you're going to wire something to, let's say, a subwoofer in your back of your room, that's a good option. I have my turntable on the other side of the room. That's going to a dedicated phono preamp with XLR outputs. That balance signal now is traveling across the room about 20 feet. And I don't have to worry about noise being introduced in that signal. The connectors between the two, the most common for unbalanced is the RCA connection. And the most common for the balanced is the XLR. And that's used a lot by professional musicians versus the unbalanced is more common in your home. So I hope that helps answer your question. So Carr is writing in about online test of Dolby Atmos. To be aware, when he's playing back through an app, they may not play accurately. He's experiencing where rear channels played from an online app are coming through the front speakers instead of the back. He found this out when he was doing test tones from his Yamaha RX-A6A, which correctly identified all the speakers. I'm assuming you're using the mobile AV control app that Yamaha has, but if you're using something else, let me know. But thanks for bringing this to our attention. We didn't notice that when we were reviewing the unit in-house. We had the 8A. But if others are experienced, let us know. And don't know if I quite understand all the particulars there, but certainly if you're hearing signals that should be coming out of the rear channels through your front channels, something's wrong. Don Juan is writing in about the VTI rack that's behind me, and you see in a lot of these videos. Well, we did a video on this April of 2021, and this is from VTI. And VTI, this one particularly is the BL304. They have other models. Some have 4 legs, some have 3 legs. They can get them in different colors. But look at that video, and it's going to show you more details about their racks that they sell. I've been very happy with these for what, it's unique. It's completely open air. It probably helps with the cooling of anything that we put into the rack. Glad you thought those were interesting. Now we got a couple of comments about Class D amplification used in the Pioneer and Onkyo products. First one that's writing in about wishing Pioneer would go back to their D3 amplifiers. And they preferred the sound. We've had these comments come in quite a bit that love the prior generation Pioneer models. And I think it would be good to have that D3 option or some Class D option that's available on these products. And there's no clear reason for why they switch back to Class AB on the newest generations. And here's another one writing in, Rocco, waiting, hoping that Onkyo and Pioneer make Class D flagships again. And he got excited to hear that when JBL released the new MA9100 HP, that it also has Class D. So he's waiting to see how those are rated. But, there's different calibers of Class D. Just saying that they're Class D doesn't necessarily mean they're good and doesn't necessarily mean they're bad. It's in the details. What modules are they using? And are they the better ones? I think there should be more options for Class D and AV receivers. We don't see that a lot here. Macintosh is one manufacturer that does have in their MHT300 Class D amplification. So it's not all bad. Roger Barron's writing, I thought I'd tell you how he figured out why he wasn't getting sound from his height speakers. Now he's got a Macintosh MX123. And this is when he's playing back Atmos through the system. So he should be hearing something coming through the height speakers. And he found out that the Odyssey correction had the volume levels down too low. So he manually turned them up and blended them with the rears and the surrounds. The Odyssey is fine. It was just the volumes. It was the levels, and that made the difference. And then, of course, on the Roku device, he had to go set that back to auto and not pass through to get the Atmos from his Amazon Prime and from Netflix. So great. Thank you for sharing those findings. It's really helpful that I'm happy that you've now got it working. And it was just Odyssey not setting those levels correctly. Now he went back to me and said he was using a sound meter to help balance this out. That's a good way to do it. He was leveling them set to 75 dBs. Another good technique, right? So you can get a very basic sound meter and do some of this stuff yourself where these calibrations are falling down, or just to double check the calibration that's automatic. Did it do a good job? So I like that. So, and he said he adjusted the heights to 80 dB, so a little higher on the heights, right? And he thought he had to boost the heights a little bit because what he felt was coming from Amazon Prime and Netflix was too low for those immersive channels. So he made the adjustments to his preference. Way to go. Here we're just getting somebody coming in and saying, we appreciate the hard work. Cheers. We like these comments. Even if you're just simply telling us we liked it, we didn't like it, that's good feedback. So keep those coming. Thank you. Geeks Feeling Good, welcome back. If you've been a frequent flyer here on this series. He's saying he picked up a Samsung Q990D. So this is a soundbar. So he's trying to save money. What he really wants is an Anthem AVM90 Parason Perliston Super System. So he's got a vision for where he wants to go. He's got to save his money up. And he said, look, I was able to pick up this system from Samsung for $1,175. This retails for just under $2,000. So it sounds like you got a really good sale here. And that was delivered. So that included shipping costs, maybe even tax if you have that applicable in your area. But that's a good cost. And he says these are called the greatest of all time of sound bars for a reason. So we had to, hook this up, find out if this was going to improve what he was just getting out of his television. Of course, what comes with televisions today, if it does have speakers, isn't usually that great. He says now he can take his time to then fill in the other components in the right way, not rush into it. I think that's a nice approach, a nice interim solution. And I hope you enjoy this. Now, the other things I'll mention about this Samsung system. Now, Samsung is the company, by the way, that owns Harman, which owns JBL, which owns Arcam. So they could be borrowing some of that knowledge from the brands that they own for speakers. That might be a reason why these are getting some good reviews. They're also wireless. Now, they claim this to be an 11.1.4 system, but it's all in one soundbar. You do have some external speakers and a subwoofer that goes with this. I haven't really looked into deep, but it's something I'm curious about. The soundbar itself, I believe, has 15 drivers, 246 watts within it. It's got a little remote. So let me know how this is working out for you. I think this is, again, a nice way to step up without going into the full expense of really what you're trying to get at. Now, Michael Burton is writing in about his Denon AVR-A10H. It's not doing things well with the CEC control. So he's got everything hooked up through the AVR, the Denon AVR. And the problem is, when he's trying to turn things on by hitting the source on the television, the Samsung television, they're not all coming on. But when he goes to turn off the sources, everything turns off. So he's getting it working well in one direction and not the other. And it's just the Denon receiver that's not coming on with the sources and the Samsung TV. And he's wondering why. And I'd say, yes, this is odd. But I find that CEC control with HDMI is often tricky. There seems to be a lot of issues getting the brands to transmit and interpret in the same way. Now, this is a difficult problem for manufacturers to solve. I would start, though, by testing out your HDMI cable. This can sometimes be the source of the problem. Your Denon receiver should have built-in tools to test that cable that's in the manual. I would go test that out. If it doesn't test out well, change out the cables, try it again, see if that works. Perhaps others have some tips and tricks that will get you so you can turn everything on through the source on that remote for your TV. So good luck with that. Blessing Eagle is saying we did not mention Class D amplification, but otherwise a great review on the Modern Audio series. Well, thank you. And thank you for filling in that detail. Sometimes we miss one. This is one that we didn't cover. So thanks for filling that in. I feel a few of you have mentioned something similar. Eric wrote he just bought an Onkyo TX-RZ50 for $900 through accessories for less. And we've heard other reports of sub $1,000 prices for this model. I think this is great for our community to have this option that has Dirac Live built into it for free for under $1,000. I think this is a great deal, and it's a good sounding unit. Now, it doesn't have everything but it has enough for most of us. That's why I like this unit. Dan is writing in, just checking out how we're doing with our JBL Modern Audio 9100 HP. Well, we haven't got to it. I got kind of delayed this week, and this is why we haven't been doing this video. But I'm hoping to get into it tomorrow. We'll see. And here's the problem. I had a tennis injury. I shared this with him. And I've got a little fracture on the bottom of my fibular tip. It's small. It's not displaced, but it set me back as far as doing these videos. So hopefully we're able to get back. And he's like saying, no problem. Thank you for your understanding. Sometimes we have things that we can't avoid. So hoping to do it this weekend. But it does come back, though, with a question. He's saying, will I be using an iPhone or an Android device for the room correction associated with JBL? It will be an iPhone because we use entirely iOS here. I don't have an Android device, though I have an old tablet. Might be able to work. We'll see if it still works. But yeah, I have iPhones, and we'll start there. But if anybody has feedback on the Android that is maybe different than the iOS, share that with us. It's always helpful. We're getting a comment here. Great video. He picked up the Arcam AVR-A10 last month, and he's very happy with it so far. But he wanted to know the name of the remote app. And I was going back through my notes, and I'm just not aware of a remote app that Arcam provides that is used with their current lineup of AVRs, including the AVR-A10. Now, JBL does have their Music Life app, although that seems to be sunsetting. And I don't see Arcam has support for it. It's not showing up on the Apple sites. And Arcam has some apps, but it seems to be for the older generation of Arcam products. So let us know if anybody knows what Arcam is doing for mobile apps. It seems to be very thin in that area, but they do have their web page. That's what I use for configuration. You put the IP address in. Now you can go in and configure through a web page these units. So hopefully that helped. And if anybody has something more to share, that would be great. User, some combination of letters and numbers, he writes, are the faceplates and volume knobs of AudioControl AVRs made of actual aluminum and metal? Now, I answered your question, but I made a mistake. I confused AudioControl with Arcam. We had brought in the Arcam AV41. And from what I recall, these are metallic on the Arcam version, but they're not heavy metal like on my old Sony TAE 9000 ES processor. That thing was solid. What we mostly see out there now is kind of like aluminum coated veneered plastic, light. And that's what I believe was on the Arcam. Although now I'm thinking it might have been all plastic. Somebody really knows, let me know. But that wasn't your question. Your question was on AudioControl. So anybody that owns an AudioControl, you can't see this in a picture. Is that a real metal volume knob? And is that faceplate? The faceplate does look metallic from what I could see on the pictures, but I've never brought in an AudioControl product. We had done an overview of the AudioControl range in January of 23. And he's also complaining that, look, I've just replaced, or I just installed a Denon 2800 to replace an aging Onkyo just for over $1,000. It's smaller, it's lighter, it's more expensive than the $600 unit that he was replacing. And he's like, what's going on here? Because I feel like I'm paying more but getting less. I get it, right? I did come back and say, look, I answered your question wrong. So if anybody knows about the materials that are used with AudioControl on their knob and everything and the kind of the feel of those, let us know. Now, occasionally we get some that aren't happy with the reviews that we do or think it's missing something, like Craig is writing here that, look, we spent a lot of time comparing Denon against prior generations of Denon, but he found that to be pointless. He wants to know how these compare to other brands, or if they want to select between similarly priced brands. Well, we do those videos. we have comparison videos between brands, Onkyo and Yamaha and Marantz. Yes, we have them out there. This video was focused on a comparison of Denon versus the prior generation because we do have an audience that might own the prior generation of Denon or even considered that at some point and then decided on something else or held off because it was lacking something and want to know if the new generation is delivering more. Or they have a model down below. Like in this case, we were talking about the 6800. So maybe they had the 4800 from Denon and want to know, hey, if I upgrade to the 6800, will I get a little bit more? If I go from the 6700, which is the prior generation, what am I getting? Is it worth the upgrade price? So we're trying to answer that question as well. So please be patient when sometimes it may not be the video exactly for you. Just hit pause, go on to the next video, try to find something else we have that more suits what you're trying to get information on. So thank you though for writing in and let us know that what you needed. And here's another one saying, look, what you're doing here isn't apples to apples. We get this comment a lot when I compare a lower cost model, which may be a receiver, to a higher cost, let's say, processor. In this case, it was a Marantz Cinema 50 against an Emotiva RMC1, which is like twice the cost of the Cinema 50. Like that's $2,500 versus $5,000 at the time. Why are you doing this? And then I have to buy amps to go on that. I'm like, look, sometimes we have the audience that wants to know if I want to take a step up and go from a receiver to a processor and now have more money so I can spend $5,000 instead of $2,500. Am I really going to realize that much improvement in the solution? Is it going to sound that much better? Now, in this case, it did. It did sound better. But I'll tell you, the Cinema 50 had more features. So for half the cost, the Cinema 50 is delivering more features. So I think it is fair and it is value here. Well, you can disagree, and that's okay. Just keep those comments coming. We get a lot of questions about which model would I select within a certain budget, with other certain criteria. We get these occasionally. We'll continue to bring these up. Here they're asking just a general question. This person must be in Europe. He's asking for a receiver, the best one that's under 1,200 euros, that will deliver a 5.1.2 Atmos experience. Now, I usually point people to the Onkyo TX-RZ50 if they're really looking for a good receiver at a good value and will deliver the best balance of features and performance. But that 1,200 euro threshold that you're putting in there, which is equivalent to, like, say, 1,300 US. But it appears that European prices are a little higher than what I see in the US. And what the closest I could find for that model was from Nubert for 1,399 euro. And so given that you need to focus on something lower cost, you might want to go to the next model down on Onkyo, like their TX and R7100, which I found for around 1,000 euro on sale from RMS stores. So hopefully that helped you. And I know it is often challenging. If you have a budget to hit, keep your selection under that and still get something really good. Now, somebody is asking, if you had to choose between an Onkyo TX-RZ70 and a Pioneer LX805, what would you choose? Now, they have an LX505 from Pioneer, but he's curious about Dirac Live bass control, and he's wondering if he should exchange it. So here's my feeling on, is it worth it between Onkyo and Pioneer? They're going to be really equivalent. Now, Pioneer says they've got 10 more watts per channel on amplification. I wouldn't worry about 10 more watts. If it's that close, you're not going to gain much from 10 more watts of amplification. If you need balanced outputs and inputs, now you're going to get some on your Pioneer. They have the front balance, and I think they have a balanced input as well. And Onkyo does not have balanced inputs or outputs. So if that's a big deal, then you maybe shift you to Pioneer. And they say, and as far as Dirac Live bass control, if you have more than one subwoofer, I think it's worth it. It will give you a better calibration over the standard Dirac Live. So I think that would be a good upgrade. And of course, both of them are going to be able to do that in their flagship models. So hopefully that helps you address your question. Now, Onkyo also has their THX certification. And that's something you're not going to find in Pioneer. Now, there's some extra sound modes in there. So if you really want that, Onkyo might be your selection. And he's also saying, though, he likes the Pioneer looks, the orange, the blue light face. So he thinks this looks like somewhat like a Macintosh at a lower cost. So that's fair. And what they've done with Pioneer, Integra, and Onkyo is each brand has different colored lights. So if you like the orange, you're a Pioneer person. And if you like the more blue side, it's more Onkyo. Now this person's saying between Denon and Marantz, you're just paying for the Marantz name. It's really the same components inside. So he feels that's weird. Well, I think there are differences. We try to show in our videos the interior shots where we can find them that show the power supplies, and they can be different. And some of the components can be different. And how these are tuned out. Sometimes they use different chips for the DACs. And the result is different. And we've had these in, like our super comparisons, side by sides, A, B, C switches, swapping between models. And we consistently pick the Marantz at a similar price level over the Denon equivalent model. It's a subtle difference. If you're looking to save money, I say, yeah, still go with the Denon, because it's not going to be that really much of a difference. And I do believe you do pay a premium over the upgrades you do get. So keep that in mind. The sonic experience improvement isn't necessarily worth the price difference that you see. So good comment. And here's somebody asking any differences between the Cinema 50 and the Denon 3800. So very similar question. He's like, if there isn't much difference, I'm just going to go with the Denon because I'm not going to pay the premium that Marantz wants. I gave the similar response here. Subtle differences. I compared all four of these models. Always found the Marantz models to be a little more spacious, a little more rich within the same tier. So if you're concerned about cost, stay with what's in your range, and the Denon should be just fine. Shane is saying thanks for making these videos. He's about to get a Cinema 30 or a Denon AVR-A10H. And they found these videos to be very helpful in the purchasing decision. But he's worried about getting this license that's not transferable for Dirac. I think this is an issue with a lot of buyers of Marantz and Denon, and they were glad in this latest new models from Denon Marantz that Dirac is an option. But most implementations of Dirac give you the base Dirac functionality at no charge and just charge you for the Dirac Live bass control. But in this case, you got to pay for it in all cases. And it's only Odyssey that comes natively free. So he's wondering, am I better off just going with a mini DSP with the multi-sub options? I think, hey, if you're not afraid of putting in the manual effort, you can get similar results, in some cases better than using Dirac. Then you can save yourself some money. But if you want something that's really automated and easy to use, I would suggest just paying the money and buying that Dirac license, even though it doesn't transfer if you went to buy the next model in a few years. So good comment. And then writing in and saying he saw the new Odyssey A1 Evo demo. Another thing we're going to check out, we mentioned this before, so another cheaper way of doing it, and is it really as easy as they say it's going to be? Again, another alternative to using Dirac or Odyssey Mult EQX, which costs money as well. Now we're getting the comments. just 2 days ago that Denon announced the AVC A10H and the AVR-A10H 13.4 channel. Is this going to replace the AVR-X8500HA? I love it when this audience gives us information first. This triggered me to see it. I try to look at these sites and you miss it one day and now the announcement comes out, but you guys were there first. Thank you so much. Can Beats and also Spitzy. Can you do a breakdown on the differences between the A10H and the flagship Denon A1H, please? In a comparison to the 8500 it's supposed to replace. And he's looking to upgrade his trusty old Denon 7200WA. Thanks, mate. Well, thank you. And absolutely, we're going to do this breakdown. It's coming. But in the meantime, let's go back. We did this video at the beginning of this year, January of this year, on the 6800. This was the last receiver that Denon released. $3,500, 13.4 channel of processing with 11 amplifiers built in. And this was the overview video we did at the time. So now we've got the AVR X8500HA that's been in their portfolio for a while, which was introduced in 2021 with this new model coming out, the A10H, moving it from an X series to an A series, which suggests it's going to inherit a lot of the capabilities that are in the flagship A1H. That will be interesting to pour into to see how much of a difference there is. And we had this table that we did in that last video for the 6800 showing this gap in the portfolio with nothing in the current generation to address the capabilities of the X8500. 15 channels of processing, 13 onboard amplifiers at 150 watts into 2 channels at $4,600. And so now, of course, as you move to the new generation, that 15 channels becomes 17 because now they're doing 4 subwoofer outputs, but it's still 13 channels of amplification in this new model, the A10H, still at 150 watts, like the flagship, and only $100 more. I think that's reasonable. Going from 2021 to 2024, and then it's $100 more with extra technology, the HDMI improvements, etc. And now you've got up to 4 subwoofers. Really good. So this fills in. We are going to do an in-depth video on this, and we'll explore and see what all the differences are. We're also interested in how Marantz is going to fill in its portfolio, because you remember, if you've seen that video, the AV7706 hasn't been addressed. There is a lower cost processor that we're hoping that Marantz will introduce. And today we just have the AV10 flagship at $7,000. Let's come in with something that might be like the new A10H from Denon, but maybe it's a processor only from Marantz. Maybe they even have a receiver version that ups the game from the Cinema 30. That we'll wait and see. So what are your thoughts? What do you believe is going to be coming from Denon Marantz? What do you feel, this new Denon receiver is going to do for the market? Is it something you're interested in? What do you think Marantz is going to do? That feedback would be useful to the Ripewave community. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. We do have that thanks button. You give us a one-time donation, always helpful. Take a look at some of the affiliate links that pop up during this video. And if you do purchase something in one of those sessions, and it doesn't matter what you buy, when you click into one of those retailers, you'll get a small commission. And you don't pay anything more for those products. It does help this channel. And of course, don't forget to hit that bell notification when the next video is posted. Now, I hope to see you all again real soon. And until then, keep evolving your audio experience.